What the fuck is going on YouTube? What a UFC 283 event we just had. We had an absolute fun time at the watch party, and as well we had the Eagles, our reigning almost reigning division champs in the NFC. And honestly, it was a really entertaining weekend. We had two new champions actually get crowned champion at UFC 283, as well as two legends in the game fucking retiring, which honestly was a little unexpected, and we actually predicted it in the watch party. The guy behind the camera right now, my co-guy on this channel, the guy that edits all the videos, actually predicted. He said, yo, if Glover wins or loses, he's gonna fucking retire after. He's in Brazil, he's older, it's gonna happen. And what do you fucking know? It actually fucking happened. That's what we do here on the Kevin Hoop Show. We were 5-0 for predictions on the main card. We're predicting retirements before it happens live. What more can you fucking ask for in a watch party and on a YouTube channel? Like, come on. We're covering everything. We're hitting points that other people are not talking about. And that's why you guys should like, comment, and subscribe. Tune into the watch parties. We usually do them every single UFC fight night or pay-per-view. Usually we go live when the main card starts, so around 7 to 10 o'clock, when depending on which fight night it is. Apparently, and I think it's confirmed, the Derek Lewis main card fight actually goes live at 1 a.m. February 4th or 5th, so that's going to be a fun one. But moving on, it was a really good fight card on UFC 283. Talking about the prelims a little bit and the main event itself. There was 9 fights total between the two, 4 on the prelims, 5 on the main card. All the prelims actually went to a submission or a fucking knockout, which I think is pretty impressive. And if you talk about the main card, out of the 5 fights, 2 of them went to a decision, and 3 of them went to knockout or submission. And in between the prelims transitioning into the main card, it was 4 knockouts or submissions, and the first fight was a knockout or submission in the main event. So I really thought that little 5-fight streak of knockouts or submissions was very entertaining, and I think it goes to show a little bit of that Brazilian culture that fighters try and bring to the Brazilian fighting fans. They don't really go out there to try and go to a decision. They try and finish the fight. They really try and put all of their blood, sweat, and tears on the line. They're not fucking trying to win by points or stalling or not pushing the fight. They're constantly throwing strikes or trying to put submissions on people, which I think is fucking tippable. That's what the Eagles were doing all fucking day Saturday against the Giants. Shout out to the Eagles again. Go Birds! Moving on, though, we're going to be talking about the first fight of the actual card. We're talking Johnny Walker versus Paul Craig. Now, honestly, this was a little bit of not knowing who was going to really take it. I think either fighter could have taken the win for this fight. But Johnny Walker coming out really fucking fast in the first round with a first round knockout, I believe it was. I actually have my kind of live play-by-play after it happened. It was a first-round KO, and Johnny Walker actually had his leg elevated. Paul Craig had a kind of single leg hold on him, and Johnny Walker just fucking hit him with the right hand, and Paul Craig didn't defend himself at all, which I thought was pretty surprising in the moment. I was like, why isn't he doing anything? He's not defending himself. And then Johnny Walker hit another fucking 2 or 3 big shots. I think he got an elbow in there as well. Absolutely fucked Paul Craig up and started the main event off fucking brilliantly. You couldn't ask for anything more. Like, you had the Brazilian coming out with the W in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. You couldn't ask for anything more than that for as a Brazilian fan, especially from a guy like Johnny Walker, who's a pretty exciting guy in general. I think he has a pretty flamboyant personality in a good way, like not trying to put any shade on him or anything, but I think he's very outgoing. He always does the worm. He always does a fun celebration afterwards. He's a very laughable guy. He tries to make people laugh. He tries to bring entertainment to people, and hats off to that. That's why I watch the UFC. Moving on from that fight, though, it was a pretty quick fight. There was not that much to talk about. It happened within like the first 45 seconds to a minute of the fight. But moving on, we had Jessica Andrade go up against Kaylin Murphy, which I honestly didn't even know that this fight was on the card. I was more excited for the Johnny Walker and all the Brazilians fighting on, just because I'm a big Brazilian fighter fan. But obviously, with my predictions. But talking about this fight, this was one of the more entertaining fights on the card. There was some fights that obviously were a little slower that went to a decision, but this one was one that went to a decision that had constant fighting. And some fights that go to a decision obviously aren't as exciting, but this one, these two ladies were going back and forth constantly, and in my opinion, it wasn't even that much of a back and forth. It was Kayla Murphy just trying to counter everything that Jessica Andrade was throwing at her and absolutely getting her ass whooped doing it. She did not land many counters. I don't know if I have a stat on this, but I believe after the first round it was like completely lopsided, where Jessica Andrade had like triple the amount of strikes, or almost more than double the amount of strikes that Kayla Murphy had just after the first round. It was pretty impressive, and I think it just goes to show how much that Jessica Andrade is elite in her skill in MMA, because not only is she moving up in weight divisions, but I think that she's going to be having a title shot very soon in her future because of that. She is a ex-UFC champ in the weight division right below what she's fighting now, and I do think that she has a definite title shot in her future in that division. So good luck to Jessica Andrade with that. I really enjoyed watching her fight. And I want to shout out to Kayla Murphy's song when she walked out. It was a pretty exciting song. I forget the song that it was, but it was definitely an American rock song that I think that a lot of the Brazilians were not vibing with, especially when Jessica Andrade is coming out in a freaking Indian feathered kind of headgear sort of thing. I don't really know how to put it, but I thought that was, just pretty ballsy of Kayla Murphy. And, she took everything on the chin. She ate a lot of hard shots from Jessica Andrade. I think I have it here on the feet all 3 rounds. Kayla Murphy tried to go in for a lot of takedowns, and Jessica Andrade answered every single one with good defense. If she had 5 more seconds, though, in that second round, she really had Kayla Murphy wobbly, and I think that we said it live. If she had 5 seconds, that fight was going to end in the second round. So this fight easily, I think, could have ended by a KO or KO/TKO, especially if it was going to be a 5-round fight. Obviously, it was only 3 rounds, but definitely Jessica Andrade had the ability to end this fight, and definitely I think could have. But I think she also wanted to play it a little smart. She didn't want to ruin her chances, and I think, Kayla Murphy is definitely an opponent who can do that. She definitely had somewhat of good boxing and good stand-up, but I just don't think last night was her night in Brazil. I think a lot of the fans had something to do with some of these Brazilians coming out with a win. Not saying the Brazilians don't have fighters or fans, but this is the first time the UFC is back in Rio de Janeiro, and it seemed like all of the fans were just super excited in general. I know I have this point a little later on, but a lot of the times when exchanges happened that were on the ground or grappling or jiu-jitsu heavy, if, let's say, someone got from side mount or from guard into mount into a very good position for somebody grappling, I think that a lot of the fans noticed that and cheered on, which you don't really see a lot, especially in the United States when the UFC events happen. You see that a lot in the ADCC events and other grappling events like that. But when you have the UFC fans in Brazil actually cheering when Glover Teixeira goes from freaking side mount to mount on Jamal Hill, after Jamal Hill just had his top control, I think it was pretty impressive and just exciting to see that a lot of these Brazilian fans are just super passionate about the Brazilian fighters, and it's super cool to see that type of passion that these fans have just for actual MMA exchanges. Sometimes there's boos when things go to the ground, and I'm fucking tired of it, all right? I'm fucking tired of it. That's got to change. People got to be more like the Brazilian fans or more like the ADCC fans. Need more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners as UFC fans. We got to get it in, all right? We got to get them in here. Moving on, though, to the meat and potatoes. Sorry if I, talked a little bit about the prelims and stuff. It was an overall really exciting card, guys. I'm telling you, the first pay-per-view for 2023 being all these submissions and all these new champions, I think it's going to have a little bit of what's to see in the future. We're obviously going to see Jamal Hill again. We're obviously going to see Brandon Moreno again as a champion, at least one more time. So I think, maybe we see Jamal Hill. He could be the next guy at light heavyweight. He could be the guy at light heavyweight now. He is that guy. But as what I meant is, will he be able to be like Kamaru Usman? Will he be able to be like Alexander Volkanovski or Israel Adesanya or John Jones? I think John Jones is a little much comparing someone to as of right now. He just got the belt and he's definitely nowhere close to John Jones, obviously, in the light heavyweight division and being GOAT status. But I do think that he has proven himself a lot and that, when it comes to him being the fighting 3 times this year, he already fought once. If he fights 2 more times, maybe in the summer and maybe late 2023, defends it 2 times, I could say that that's pretty impressive at light heavyweight, and maybe he'll go on a run into 2024. Who the fuck knows? But I think it's pretty exciting to think about because, we've seen guys recently do that just 2-3 years ago, and they've just lost their belts just now and have been now kind of seen as the GOATs of this era. So is Jamal Hill the next GOAT of the light heavyweight division? We will see. I do know that Yuri Prohaska, is over here on Twitter freaking saying, "Congratulations, I'm coming." And I just think that in general, with Yuri Prohaska being in the mountains, I think there was a big snowy background. It was an absolutely crazy freaking thing of just like, I am ready for you. I'm coming for you, Jamal Hill. Just wait for it, bro. And I do think that is exciting to think about. Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prohaska. Maybe that's something that we're going to see in the future. I do not know. But, if it is, I think that Jamal Hill is definitely going to be dangerous on the feet. Talking more about him against Glover Teixeira, Jamal Hill, I think, kind of shocked the world. Obviously, I don't think that a lot of people had him. Steven, do you remember the bet line at all?
Oh, I think Teixeira was just the underdog.
All right, so maybe he didn't shock the world necessarily. So maybe I was plus 120. All right. So maybe it wasn't the biggest plus 120 for Glover Teixeira, but, it could have been plus 200, plus 300. So I don't think a lot of people maybe thought Glover Teixeira was going to win and maybe Jamal Hill was going to win. I think it was more of split. People were kind of like 50-50. And especially with Glover Teixeira's age, I do think that has something to do with his stamina or his defense and kind of where he was in the fight, especially towards the ending rounds. But one thing I know Jamal Hill did really good in this fight was manage the distance on the feet well. Not to mention all of the takedowns that Glover Teixeira was going for. I think Jamal Hill's takedown defense was absolutely phenomenal. Some of the takedowns were a little sloppy from Glover in the later rounds, but, what are you going to do when you just got fucking head kicked 20 times by Jamal Hill with those long-ass fucking legs? Like, when you've got tree trunks coming at you, you got to defend it somehow. And especially when it lands when you checked it and you're wobbling, like Jamal Hill was managing the distance extremely well with his jabs and his left-right combos and his kicks as well. A lot of people didn't really see it and talk about his leg kicks, but I do think that Jamal Hill was, focusing on the body, the head, and the legs in general. And he was doing all 3 of them, obviously not hitting the legs with his hands, but he was managing the distance very well with his jabs with his hands and managing the distance as well with his feet kicking the legs. Now, along with his feet, he threw a lot of head kicks in this fight. Now, head kicks can probably be said or argued to be one of the most powerful kicks that somebody can get landed to on their actual head. Obviously, a right uppercut, right hook, left hook for whatever left dominant, right dominant you are. But I think that the feet are definitely more powerful than the hands in general. And I just think that with all those leg kicks, some of them definitely Glover Teixeira felt, and that might have been because of his age. I saw him check just about every single head kick, though, and on some of the ones he checked, he looked the most wobbled compared to any actual strike that Jamal Hill hit. I think that there was 2 or 3 times that Glover Teixeira was completely fucking wobbled or stunned. I don't care what you want to fucking call it, but the dude was about to get knocked the fuck out by a leg kick that he checked from Jamal Hill's fucking tree trunk legs. That has got to be said for his power and just how good he is at managing the distance and constantly throwing different strikes. He's good at diversifying what he's throwing, especially against someone so experienced as Glover Teixeira. I think that that's very impressive to do. Talking about the actual striking, though, Hill had 248 of 419 significant strikes, which I think that that stat in general just goes to show. I don't think that all 400 fucking strikes were, as hard as he could have thrown them, if not, below 50%, half of them. So just half of those shots he was throwing just to manage the distance, and out of half of them, 248 basically landed, which was more than half, actually. And looking on the other side, Glover Teixeira had 108 of 196 total significant strikes hit. So he had basically a quarter or maybe half of the actual strikes thrown and landed compared to Jamal Hill with 248 hit and 419 thrown. So I just think that that stat alone really goes to show who won this fight. Definitely the decision went to Jamal Hill, no questions asked. There's no robbery talks like fucking Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon. That shit definitely should have went to Jared Gordon, but we're not going to talk about that too much. Go back to my videos and watch him if you haven't already. Another thing that Jamal Hill did, though, is he landed a lot of good knees. I think that that was pretty impressive and diversifying the game. I do know that that was something that a lot of people were kind of trying to bring into their game and talking about on Twitter. I've seen things, a lot of knees being landed. But one thing that I was kind of wondering and questioning was Jamal Hill didn't have a post-fight press conference. I was kind of disappointed about that. I kind of wanted to see his reaction. Again, I think Jamal Hill's one of the more entertaining fighters in this division. Not only his fucking highlight reels with his tree trunk legs and his fucking massive arms getting knockouts left and right, I do think that, leading up to this fight, with a month and a half's notice, just about, not even, he was doing as much media as he could. He was, bringing a lot of energy into a lot of Twitter clips that he was doing. And I was kind of disappointed. I wanted to see what he wanted to say. I wanted to see his reaction. I do know that he was very emotional in the octagon. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I know he was crying a lot, and it was even hard for DC to get an interview with him. It was kind of, Steven said it was funny. It was like McGregor when he couldn't get up, and you saw Joe Rogan go down on the side with him. It looked just like that when DC went down and tried to talk to Jamal Hill. And he even kind of put the mic right in front of his face, which I thought was a little bit messed up. But it looked exactly like Rogan and Conor McGregor on the side, back in 2019, 2020, or not the 2020. It might have been 2021 when he fought, or 2020 when he came back. I don't know if it was then from that injury or when it was from with Khabib. But, everyone's seen the meme of Joe Rogan and Conor McGregor on the side, and Rogan has the mic like he's just cozied up right next to him. Like, yeah, we're here. It's shitty, but we're fucking doing it. I think everyone knows that. I mean, it's definitely a funny one. And it was, good to see DC showing that commitment and trying to make sure that he's doing everything that he can to bring, try and get fighters to at least say something in the fights. And, he's trying as hard as he can as, bringing the same kind of energy that Joe Rogan brings. And I actually had to go off track a little bit here. John Anik was on Food Truck Diaries recently talking about the dynamic trio or the dynamic trio of Rogan, DC, and John Anik on the commentator desk for these pay-per-view events, and he talked about there's like a thing behind the scenes of when Rogan's there, the energy in general is just different at these UFC events or behind the scenes with these three at least. He just brings the energy up in general. He brings good vibes in general. I think that's just awesome to see from Rogan, and I think it's awesome to see DC trying to, I think, do the same thing, trying to bring as much as he can when Rogan is not there. And hats off to fucking DC for just doing everything that he can in these post fight interviews, because it's definitely a hard thing to do. I've watched other events and other organizations, other people doing post-fight press conferences or post-fight interviews. It can be very hard for the person holding the mic and asking the questions, not only to think about a good question, but to also put a mic in a fighter's face if they just won or almost lost or who knows what. It can be a little awkward, and it can be a little like, looking for words, kind of like what I just did right there. But right after that, we actually saw, shout out to fucking Glover Teixeira, an absolute fucking legend, actually fucking retired. And there was two. Shogun Rua actually retired as well. I don't know as much about Shogun. I might have watched a few of his fights when I first got into the UFC. I went on a big binge and forgot a lot of the fights that I went on that big binge. But I got to go back on UFC Fight Pass and watch some of Shogun's fights, because he's definitely a legend, and he retired in Brazil just like Glover Teixeira did. And once again, I think it's fucking tippable for the Kevin Hoop Show to do a live prediction. I got to make a short or do a clip or something of us predicting that, and then at the end, us actually saying, holy shit, we fucking predicted it. Because we did it 3 hours beforehand, and maybe some other people did too. Maybe it was a little obvious, it being in Rio de Janeiro, but I do think that, the Kevin Hoop Show is coming through with some great ass fucking predictions. We bring up good things. I think that's kind of reassuring me. Look at our fucking reputation sheet growing, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully some of you guys have seen the reputation sheet from beforehand, from us predicting fights when we just started back in October, kind of getting into the UFC content. But I do think that, Glover Teixeira retiring was a little sad. I think that I do know a little bit more about him, just because I do know that he's trained with Tim Kennedy before, and Chuck Liddell, guys from back in that age used to have this place called the Pit in California, where they would all come to and train together, and it was kind of like this invite only kind of gym, and it was really, rustic, really fucking sweaty, smelly, stingy, probably not the safest or healthiest place to train in hygiene wise. Even, physically wise, these guys were hard sparring. Chuck Liddell, is known for, not having the safest of sparring sessions or getting pissed off and bringing a lot of power. I've read Tim Kennedy's book, and Tim Kennedy, as an up and coming fighter, actually got the invite to go in with these guys when he was like in his 20s, which is pretty cool when these guys are in their 30s, in their upper 20s, really experienced MMA guys kind of figuring out what this MMA thing is in the beginning of the UFC. And, kind of to hear how the mentality of these guys, these guys were living and sleeping in their cars. These guys were living in the gym. These guys were living paycheck to paycheck, having full-time jobs and fighting as a professional MMA fighter in the UFC, not making as much money as people are now. And, having tough sparring sessions after a fucking long day of work, of hearing a fucking Karen in your ear talking about how your customer service was shit, or how, there was a hair on her fucking raviolis in Olive Garden. Who the fuck knows what the Karen was talking about on that fucking day? And these guys are still showing up to this fucking gym called the Pit and just absolutely giving it all they had to do what they had to do. And I think Glover Teixeira, had an absolutely great career. Getting the fucking belt at the end of his career in the light heavyweight division is just, absolutely fucking awesome. I don't think many people can fucking say that they've been a champ at the age of 40 in this sport of mixed martial arts. And it just goes to show how talented the guy is, how much experience the dude is. He's an absolutely fucking book of knowledge when it comes to mixed martial arts, especially when it comes to the ground game and top control. He's an absolutely legend when it comes to that. So hats off to Glover Teixeira. I think it was a little cool seeing Alex Pereira in Glover Teixeira's corner. I don't know if there was anything said. I know that I saw some clip. I don't know. I'm not talking to you here, but I do know. I think I saw some clip of Alex Pereira actually saying something to Jamal Hill. I don't know if he said something or if Jamal Hill was just shaking his hand and being nice to the corner, but. There's been talk about Alex Pereira fighting Khamzat Chimaev. There's been talk about Alex Pereira moving up to light heavyweight. He said the only reason he came to the UFC was to fight Israel Adesanya, and then he went on the Ariel Helwani show and fucking called out every fucking person that was calling him out, basically. So who knows what that, future will entail. I think Jamal Hill kind of has some options here. We were just talking about who was I just fucking talking about Jamal Hill fighting in the future?
Yuri.
Yeah, Yuri. Thank you.
Forget about Yuri.
Thank you, young Jamie or young Stephen. Jamal Hill obviously has some options. He can fight Yuri. He can fight Alex Pereira. Who knows what his options really are? But he definitely can have a bright future in this light heavyweight division and have some exciting fights that I'm definitely down to watch. I wasn't the biggest Jamal Hill fan. Not saying that I didn't like him or anything. I just haven't seen him fight a lot. And now that I've seen him fight, I am watching every fucking fight that he's gonna be in because they're on pay-per-views now, and I'm probably gonna be rooting for him. So shout out to Jamal Hill. Unless it's Yuri Prohaska, I'm coming. I'm definitely going to be fucking rooting for him. That shit actually kind of gave me chills when I watched that fucking clip. He's in the fucking mountains in the snow. There's just nothing better than gets that. He's like, congratulations. Like, yeah, go ahead, go play. Play that shit. Play that shit. Let me know when you hit play. Because I just thought that.
I got it.
Shout out to the production. We're getting used to things here, but all right, go ahead, play it.
Congratulations.
I'm coming. Congratulations.
I'm coming. I'm coming!
I'm coming! Like, come on. Like, I think he's from Poland, right? Like, yeah, he's got that. I think, dude, there's fucking Vikings come from Poland, right? But Vikings come from Poland. Google that for me real quick. Do Vikings come from Poland? We're going to get that actual fact pulled up here because that is an absolutely just Viking type of thing to do. And the way he said it, I'm coming! Like he's coming to invade, like he's coming to take over. And I just absolutely love that mentality. No, they're all right. So, but Vikings are not from Poland. Maybe there's
Come from Scandinavia.
Scandinavia. Close enough, all right?
Norway and Sweden.
All right, close enough.
The Swedes.
Either way, I do think that Yuri Prohaska is going to be coming back for another title shot. Maybe right away, maybe he might have a tune-up fight to make sure, depending on how long he takes. Maybe we'll see that fight in the summer. I do think that could be definitely possible. In 6 months from now, I think is good healing time for Yuri Prohaska. Maybe a year, maybe towards the end of the year, 10, 11 months might be a little bit more realistic or on the safer side. I don't know how he's looking, but in that video, you guys just saw a fucking video. He's fucking looking good, all right? He's in the mountains. He's over here fucking out in the cold, not giving a shit, in the snow. He doesn't give a shit. He's coming. Moving on, though, I really think I was talking about the knees that Jamal Hill was talking about. Islam Bonfim. Shout out to this guy with a UFC debut. Rogan actually talked about it on his Instagram. You have it up?
Yeah.
You're playing it?
Yeah, just keep
All right, yeah. So if you guys see this fucking double knee, it's not necessarily changing the game, but it's definitely impressive to see that this guy's bringing his own style for his UFC debut. He's already, doing things that other people aren't and maybe changing the game in some sort of ways. And coming with a flying knee that accurate and kind of using that other knee as like a kind of like a set, or to make the second knee more accurate. Like he's setting up that second knee with that first knee, and I just think that that's pretty impressive for for a UFC debut. So shout out to Islam Bonfim and Jamal Hill with the fucking good knees. But moving on to the co-main event, the other really exciting fight and kind of thing that a lot of people have been waiting for. This rivalry has been going on for 4 fucking years now. Davidson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno 4 has finally happened, and it was a fucking good one. Not only has Davidson Figueiredo not fought anybody in the past 4 years other than Brandon Moreno, but these guys have gone back and forth multiple times. I actually have broke down all of their fights, 1, 2, and 3 in another video, so go and watch that video if you guys don't know their past and their history. But, obviously Brandon Moreno has 1 win. Davidson Figueiredo has another win. They both have another tie against each other. So kind of really tied in general going into this 4th fight. And honestly, Brandon Moreno fucking brought it, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Moreno was looking like an absolutely phenomenal, well-rounded fighter. Not only was there a little controversial strike with Brandon Moreno and his right or left hand when he came across in the 3rd round, but if you kind of see it happen, he throws a punch and then hits Brandon Moreno or touches Brandon Moreno with his fingers on his face. And Davidson Figueiredo holds his right eye, but the eye that he touched him with an open palm with was the other eye. So this right eye went completely fucking shut. I am talking Davidson Figueiredo could not see out of his eye. I don't know if you can bring up one of those pictures of his eye or something, but it looked absolutely fucking terrible when Davidson Figueiredo has to, kind of lose to his eye being closed. I don't think if the fight went on, he would have had much of a more chance, but his eye was so bad that the doctors came in and closed his good eye and said, what am I holding up over here? What number am I holding up? For those of you that didn't watch the fight or don't have access to, what happens in the UFC when these things happen, David Figueiredo was asked that question and he could not answer. He did not know. He guessed it wrong. I don't know what the fuck he said, but the doctor did not let him continue because of that, because of how bad it was shut. And I just think that, it's sad to see it happen that way, but at the same time, you want to make sure that your eye's going to be okay, especially if you want to continue to fight, which he does. But it was absolutely terrifying kind of to see his eye be shut like that. We talked about it in the watch party. It was pretty, gruesome to see. It wasn't, the most disgusting thing that you've ever seen in the UFC. Did you pull up a picture at all?
Yeah, I got the video.
All right, awesome. But it wasn't the most gruesome thing ever that you've seen in the UFC, but it was still pretty. You don't see an eye closing like that all the time in the UFC. So, hopefully everything's all right with Davidson Figueiredo on that point of things. But shout out to fucking Brandon Moreno. I think that that shot was absolutely legal. Everybody talking about it said that it was a legal shot. That shot was completely legal and was the shot that made the eye close like that. Obviously, it wasn't because the eye poked him or anything. It was solely because of that shot. It looked like he kind of came in like this on him with his thumb, but his thumb was closed, and that looked like what it opened up the cut. He was already cut underneath his right eye, and that shot definitely opened that shit up and made his eye swell up so much to actually close like that. But it was completely legal. Talking more about the stats though, Brandon Moreno was 87-24 in total significant strikes. 87. No. Yeah, wait. 87. 85-24 in total significant strikes. That just doesn't sound. Oh, wait. Oh, no. So, this is what it was. Brandon Moreno had 85 total significant strikes, and Davidson Figueiredo had 24 total, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so that's like what? 2-3 times more Moreno actually landed on Davidson Figueiredo by the third round. This was a 5-round fight. It got stopped in the third. I kind of forgot to mention that fight, or that part about the fight. The kind of eye getting shut thing was very controversial, but Brandon Moreno looked very good, and I think that stat alone, 87-24 in total significant strikes between these two fighters, Moreno with 87, Figueiredo with 24. Just hearing those numbers, I think, says, all right, this guy obviously fucking won. Even talking about takedowns, Moreno landed 3 of 6, and Figueiredo only landed 1 of 2. So Moreno was definitely striking more and level changing more on the ground and having more control on the ground compared to Figueiredo in the striking department and in the fucking grappling department. So I know if you want to bring up the clip of the Brazilian fans kind of reacting to the Moreno leaving the stadium, there was a lot of people kind of upset about this, especially in the stadium live. I don't know if there was a lot of people upset, online because everybody kind of saw the live replay. But the Brazilian fighters or Brazilian fans were not happy with how it ended. I don't know if they saw the replay. I don't know if they were just all fucking drunk or high or who knows fucking what. I'm not saying that's what Brazilian culture is about, but I know people, get high and drink for these events. I fucking would if I went to the event. But I do think that it was a little uncalled for Brandon Moreno to have that kind of reaction by the fans. He talked about it a little bit in the press conference, like he wished he got a little bit more love. But he also said, and if you look at that video that he just pulled up, and I don't know if you played the volume on it, he actually was like, let's go! Like he was just excited. You can see that he was smiling even when people are throwing shit at him. I think that just that energy and that chaos and all of the adrenaline that he had in that moment was just very exciting for him, and no matter what in that moment he was going to be happy. He wasn't going to let anybody or anything affect that moment for him, and I don't think any of that should affect it. The dude did absolutely well. It wasn't a controversial win or decision or anything like that. Stoppage, if you want to say it was a stoppage. If you want to be technical, I do think it was a TKO. I believe that is how it was ruled, and if people are saying, it should have been like a stoppage or something, I think that Brandon Moreno cut Davidson Figueiredo. That's something that Figueiredo let happen to him, and because he had that cut, Brandon Moreno capitalized on that by focusing strikes to the face, especially focusing right on where that cut was to make his eye swell up. Now, maybe he didn't want it to swell up as much as it did, but, I do think an eye swelling up, constructs or blocks vision in general. And that's something that fighters look to do. It's the same thing with when people get bloody and they try and put blood on their opponent, or when people are on top and they, put big cross faces in or big cross elbows in on their face. It's a big thing that happens in wrestling, especially in the UFC. You see people cover their mouth and cover their nose as well to, prevent breathing sometimes to help with cardio with the other person. And those dirty things, dirty fighting, it's legal in the UFC as of right now. So that's what Brandon Moreno was going to fucking do. He's going to capitalize on the things that he was allowed to do and help him make him win. Figueiredo had the same opportunity that Brandon Moreno did. Figueiredo let that cut, though, happen to him, and that's the overall thing that messed him up in this fight. One thing, one thing that I know that also happened that Brandon Moreno was actually talking about in the post-fight press conference, which just kind of, adds to the thing of, he was really having a good time at the end of that fight, no matter what. No matter how the decision went, he wasn't going to let anything really bring him down. And to prove that, he was like, yo, where's the Jose Cuervo? Where the fuck is the Jose Cuervo? In the post-fight press conference, they were like, you had any tequila shots yet? And he's like, no. Well, where's the Jose Cuervo? Give me the Jose Cuervo. And I just thought that was really funny and, really good to see that Brandon Moreno was still in good energy after that clip and after people were still kind of, in Brazil at least, the Brazilian fans giving him shit for that stoppage or giving him shit for him or for how he won that fight. But another thing to talk about with Davidson Figueiredo, some news that he was talking about at the end of the fight, or at the end of the event, was he was talking about going up in weight. It almost looked like he was going to put the gloves down in Brazil, and there was going to be 3 legends that retired in Rio last night or over the weekend. But I do think that Davidson Figueiredo still has a little bit left in the gas tank. In general, in his fighting career, he's definitely got maybe another 2-3 years on him. I believe he's 35 or 36. I don't know if you can fact check me there. But he did talk about moving up in weight class, which I think is going to be interesting for him. I don't know if the weight cuts in general had anything to do with his performance here. I don't know if the weight cuts is just, getting harder and harder as he's moving up in age. That might have something to do with it. But I believe he's 35 or 36. You have that exact yet? I want to say 35, but at the same time, I think it might be 36.
I think he's 35.
35, yeah. Either way, I don't know if that's something that's affecting him with the weight cuts, or if that's just something that he wants to do and kind of accomplish in his career and see if he can get the belt at the higher weight class in bantamweight. There's definitely some big guys up there. I know Brandon Moreno was talking about how, outside of the octagon, Davidson Figueiredo is a pretty big guy. And the guys at bantamweight are pretty big guys too, obviously. 145 pounds. You've got Sugar Sean O'Malley there. Definitely a tall motherfucker. And, Davidson Figueiredo is not the tallest guy, but it's interesting to see if he goes up in weight and, goes on a title run. I know against Aljamain Sterling, that might be pretty interesting to see if he gets that far in that division. But definitely a lot of cool matchups you could see with Davidson Figueiredo. And maybe, that's something Sean O'Malley looks for with Davidson Figueiredo moving up. That might be something that he might be interested in. Moving on, though, I already talked about that. Was the weight cut? Yep. Gilbert Burns, baby. Gilbert fucking Burns. Moving on, we talked about the main event. We talked about the co-main event. We talked about the first two. Let's talk about the actual middle part of this sandwich of UFC fights that we had this weekend. The middle fight, the fight right before the co-main event and the main event, Gilbert Del Reno Burns, baby. I hope I got that Del Reno right. I think that's how you say it. Del Reno. It sounds like Dorito. For those of you that don't know, me and Steven have worked with a lot of Guatemalans, and they absolutely fucking love Doritos. They have an obsession with Doritos. So I don't know if it's the same with Brazilians, but I don't know if it's with Latinas in general, if there's just something with Doritos that they like. But I know my Guatemalans that I've worked with before love their fucking Doritos, and Del Reno kind of sounds like Doritos, so that's where I went with that. Either way, though, Gilbert Burns showed the fuck up. And I think was kind of making a fucking statement with Neil Magny, ladies and gentlemen. This was a pretty exciting fight for as long as the fight was on. I mean, it lasted, I think, 45 seconds. I think I have down here, there was 4 minutes and 15 seconds still left in the first round when Neil Magny actually submitted. Going into this fight, I've never actually, I've probably seen Neil Magny 1 or 2 times, but I was probably a little too drunk off the Tiger Thick. And I really noticed how tall he was in general, and kind of reminded me of, Hamzat Chimaev or Alex Pereira, kind of just big and tall guys that, are very muscly as well as tall. They in general are just big motherfuckers. Imagine like a fucking NFL fucking linebacker or something, or an NFL tight end, just tall guys that are fucking jacked. And Neil Magny kind of reminded me of that, and I thought that Neil Magny was going to have a really big advantage with that, especially with managing distance. But a lot of people said that Gilbert Burns has a really good matchup against Neil Magny's style. Gilbert Burns' style is, the perfect counter opposite, the perfect counter for Neil Magny's style. And that fucking showed this weekend. Not only did Gilbert Burns get a takedown within the first fucking 10 seconds, but it was a body fold takedown, which is very fundamental jiu-jitsu takedown techniques that me and Steven both fucking know. And It was pretty impressive to see. He went right from a body fold takedown to taking full mount against Neil Magny within the first 20 to 30 seconds. And then he started landing left rights, gets a twisting arm control against Neil Magny, which again, basic jiu-jitsu techniques that me and Steven know. We're only white belts in jiu-jitsu, and we know this shit. And from there, it goes over to a triangle arm choke, which, again, very basic. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. Very basic white belt jiu-jitsu moves that we both know. And fucking taps him out within the first 45 seconds. 20 to 30, he gets a takedown to full mount, which is the most dominant position other than taking someone's back you can get in and on the ground. And I was absolutely impressed. I'm a big fan of fucking Gilbert Burns. Even in the post-fight press conference, he was talking English. He was talking Brazilian. Finally, people can talk both languages. Fighters are going above and beyond. And that's something that I look for in fighters. Not only that, Gilbert Burns was fucking being that company guy. He was ranked number 7 or... No. Gilbert Burns is ranked number 5. Neil Magny was ranked number 12, which was, throwing Gilbert Burns. If you can real quick look at who Gilbert Burns fought last in his fight history, I don't know if it was a top 10 or a top 15 guy. That's the one thing I don't know, but Neil Magny was ranked number 12, and I think that, if you're Gilbert Burns to the UFC, you're ranked number 5, you want at least a top 10 guy. And then, if you're Gilbert Burns, you want to fight for the title. So you want someone that's ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 above you. And if not, maybe number 6 or 7. You don't really want to go too far down in the top 10.
Chimaev last.
Khamzat Chimaev. What was Khamzat Chimaev's record there? Or not record, rank. What's his rank now?
Chimaev?
Yeah, what's his general rank? Because I know that was, I think Khamzat Chimaev was coming off a top 10 ranking there. Just go to the regular, I don't think you're going to be able to see it now. Because his ranking now is probably updated. He's ranked 3 now, after he beat Burns.
Yep.
So, can you Google what was Khamzat Chimaev ranked before Gilbert Burns? Like, put that right into Google. Make sure it's not fucking Yahoo. For some reason, my fucking computer's been going to Yahoo for recently whenever I search it. I tried. It's already set to Google Chrome. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. But I do think Khamzat Chimaev he's ranked 3 now after he beat Gilbert Burns. But I believe he was ranked in the top 10 before that. If I remember the timeline correctly, I believe he was ranked below. Because obviously to get to 3, he had to beat Gilbert Burns, who was ranked 5. But even beating Gilbert Burns at 5, you think he would, just kind of be around 4 or 5.
It doesn't say.
That's fine, no worries. I do think I'm correct on that. If not, you guys can fact check me on there. Let me know in the fucking comments. But talking about this whole rankings, Gilbert Burns was bringing up Bilal Muhammad, who was recently on Rogan, and I listened to that. And Gilbert Burns was kind of calling out Bilal Muhammad mainly, and also a little bit Colby Covington, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I think that Gilbert Burns brings up a very good point here in the fact that, excuse me, in the fact that Gilbert Burns talks about how Bilal Muhammad is ranked number 4 right now, above him, but Bilal Muhammad hasn't beat anybody above Gilbert Burns, and he hasn't beat Gilbert Burns himself. So why is Bilal Muhammad ranked above Gilbert Burns? And I think that that's perfectly plausible. The last person Bilal Muhammad just beat was Sean Brady, who is ranked top 15, top 10, and I think maybe like 8 or 7. But Bilal Muhammad didn't beat Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns is like, what the fuck? If you think you're better than me, let's fight. And on the Joe Rogan Experience, Bilal Muhammad, I watched the whole thing. I don't think he said Gilbert Burns' name once. And Gilbert Burns said, Bilal Muhammad is dodging me. And I think it kind of confirmed it, just me knowing what Bilal Muhammad said on the Joe Rogan Experience. Bilal Muhammad really focused talking about Colby Covington. I think a little bit about the beef he had with Leon Edwards a little bit. But really said he thought he was focusing on Colby Covington and thought that would be a really good matchup because he doesn't think Colby is good at all. But talking about Gilbert Burns actually meeting Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns is not only did he fight Khamzat Chimaev, which I think goes to show that he will fight anybody, and he's continuing to say that after he fought Neil Magny, who I don't think he necessarily had the fight. If he wanted to, he could have said no and waited obviously longer to fight. But if he didn't want to, if he was scared of his reputation or his ranking going down, if he lost, he would have said no. And I think that shows that Gilbert Burns has confidence, number one. And number two, it shows that Gilbert Burns is willing to fight anybody and that he's a company guy. Whoever the UFC throws at Gilbert Burns, it being Khamzat Chimaev, Neil Magny, Colby Covington, Belal Muhammad, Kamaru Usman, whoever the fuck you want to throw at Gilbert Burns, he's going to fucking get in the octagon and go 3 to 5 rounds with him. And I have I have so much respect for any fighter that does that shit. You've got Sean Strickland, Bobby Green, guys that are company guys, and I think Gilbert Burns is in addition to that fucking list. So shout out to Gilbert Burns in that aspect. Not only did he beat Neil Magny in a very convincing way, and I think he deserves a top 5 match at least next. But I think it should be Belal Muhammad. He did say that he had a run-in with Colby Covington and said that, they were in Florida, I believe, at some concert and or some casino or something like that, or some fight, who knows what, and saw Colby Covington come out of the poker room or something like that. And Gilbert Burns, went up to Colby Covington, or Colby Covington actually said, "Come over here." And Gilbert Burns was like, "Me? Me? You talking to me? Are you sure you want to do this right now? Like, what are we about to do?" And because, Gilbert Burns hasn't known Colby Covington at all and has only seen Colby Covington in the media going into this interaction. And he goes over there, and Colby Covington, from Gilbert Burns' words, was the nicest, down-to-earth guy he's met. He said he was really nice. He said that Colby Covington said that he was a big fan of Gilbert Burns and that he's watched a lot of his fights and said he fights really good. Now, whether that's Colby Covington being a little slithery fucking snake and trying to, be more friends with Gilbert Burns compared to enemies and, a future opponent against him in the octagon, I don't know. I think Gilbert, if I had that, kind of thought process of how Colby Covington was going to react and why he reacted the way he did, I'm sure Gilbert Burns is smart enough to have that same thought. So I'm sure Gilbert Burns is still on his toes with Colby Covington. You are in the UFC, and at the end of the day, nobody is your friend when it comes to when you get in the octagon. So, and Gilbert Burns even said that. He said, when I get into the cage, something clicks on me, and we're not fucking friends." And I think that's around how he said it. I don't know if it was word for word, but when I watched it in the post-fight, I thought it was fucking hilarious, honestly. So shout out to Gilbert Burns. I think it was an absolutely great card in general. A great fight in general from Gilbert Burns, and great showing. Again, 4 minutes and 15 seconds still left in the first fucking round. That's 45 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, that it took Gilbert Burns to submit a top 15 guy in the UFC. The dude is fucking good. I don't care who the fuck you are. And he actually said he wants to come back soon. That's another reason I'm trying to say he's a company guy. He's showing up. He wants to fight. He said he wants to fight for the title. He said he wants to become a champion. I think he said he wants to become a champion. If you decipher that, that's championship mentality things that someone needs to have. And that's pretty good. That's something that, champions need to have. They need to believe that they will become champion and work towards becoming a champion. I believe he only fought for the belt once as of right now, and he definitely has a shot to fight again for it. Maybe in the future, maybe in the near future. I don't want to say exactly when. The things for that could be a little who knows when. Especially with Leon Edwards being the champ right now, and who knows what's going to happen to Kamaru Usman. But I do think in general that Gilbert Burns has a good shot. So shout out to Gilbert Burns in general, showing up in Rio de Janeiro with his, home field advantage and all of the fans there in Brazil cheering for him. Moving on. moving on. That's it. That's all I got. Last 2 fights were below top 10 guys. That's all I've got, ladies and gentlemen. That nothing to do with what we just talked about, but that is what we've got for the Kevin Hoop Show today. Sorry that was a little weird, but got a little new setup for today's show. So hopefully, if you guys made it to the end, I appreciate that you did. If you guys enjoyed the episode, hit that like button. We are slowly but surely becoming better and better and better. Look at the editing on these videos. Look at the production value that we're bringing to these videos. I mean, the best things that we got to do to improve this now is just the fucking webcam and the fucking mic, and we're going to get there soon enough. So get on me a little bit in the comments. Comment down below what you guys thought about these fights in general. Comment below what you guys think is going to happen in the future with some of these fights. We've got Jamal Hill as the light heavyweight king now. Who knows what's going to happen? Let me know what you think Jamal Hill's going to do next. Let me know what you guys think Brandon Moreno is going to fight next. I didn't really talk about the future of Brandon Moreno. Let me know, all right? You guys let me know. I just let you guys know for a whole hour almost. What's the time we're at right now? 55 minutes. I've just been letting you guys fucking know about what's going to actually be happening in the UFC and possibly be happening. What actually happened, what could be happening. What?
Moreno's going to be Kai Kara France, too.
You think that's going to happen?
Yeah.
All right. Boom. Do you guys think that's happening? Kai Kara France versus Brandon Moreno 2. Let me know in the comments, all right? If not, let me know who you think Brandon Moreno is going to go up against next. Let me know of someone in that division that you think, maybe in the 2 or 3 fights this guy's going to have a title shot. Let me know. Shout out to Glover Teixeira. Shout out to Shogun Rua. They had absolutely phenomenal careers, guys. I'm going to be maybe doing some videos next week of some highlights or some reels or some reactions. We'll see. Definitely we'll have some more fights and predictions coming up for Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. Had a little brain fart there, but that's something we also got to think about. We've got this whole entire first pay-per-view actually just happened. It's January 21st. We've got the 28th is next Saturday. And then the Saturday after that is the 4th with Derek Lewis and Spivak, is it? Is it Spivak? Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
Either way, it's something, I think it's some Russian name or some European last name. Either way, that's February 4th. And then 7 plus 4 is 11. That's the next Saturday. Gotta do some quick math. That's the February 11th with Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. So we've got a lot of coverage and a lot of content that is going to be coming out on the Kevin Hoop Show, ladies and gentlemen. So where I'm going with all this is hit that fucking subscribe button, all right? Just, hit boom, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Shout out to the Kevin Hoop Show. Shout out to the editing right now. It's getting better. The production of the actual podcast version of this is getting better. I think I missed an episode or one or two on the Anchor part of things on Spotify, but check out Anchor, check out Spotify, Apple Podcast. The audio version of the podcast will be uploaded to this. But let me know what you guys think about the hour-long episodes. The more podcasty, more one-on-one type of coverage of the actual events. I like to do these on Mondays, kind of just recapping the actual events because usually they happen on Saturday, and Sundays we do a quick little video, and Monday is the long boy. Like, comment, subscribe, guys. I really appreciate it. We are at 60 subscribers right now. For all of you that have subscribed, thank you very much. For all of you that made it to the end of this fucking video, thank you very much for listening to my fucking annoying ass voice and my energy. If you guys did like it, hit the like button. It's the last time I'm going to say it. Have a good one. Go Birds!